Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Today, out in the shop, working on another TJ. We got a 2006 TJ that the customer is complaining about a few things. Driveline vibration upon taking off, taking off from a stop, first, second gear. Got a little bit of a vibration in the driveline. He was thinking U-joints, so we went on and got U-joints and stuff for it coming. Just so we would have them. It's got 160K on it, and everything's original underneath it as far as that goes. But he was also complaining about it was really squirrely on the road. Would chase the grooves in the asphalt really bad, and would get really uncomfortable when hitting dips and things like that. He also brought fluids and stuff over to service transmission transfer case. So we're going to do that. But yeah, I think I've already narrowed down a lot of his issues. So let's get at it. So first up, he just bought this not too long ago and got it as it sits. It's got 35 1250s underneath it, and based on the clearance around the wheel wells, I'm gonna say between 3.5 to 4 inches of lift. And while looking around on this thing, I've discovered that the drive shaft in the back is at a fairly steep angle, and there's no transfer case drop on it, and it's still running a slip yoke on the rear of the transmission. So there is his driveline problems or vibrations. So I went and ordered a T-case drop setup because this thing's not going off the pavement. He just tools around in it and pulls a pontoon boat every now and then with it. So just wants it fun to drive. So we're not doing slip yoke eliminator and all that stuff on it. Like I said, it'll never be wheeled. So ordered a 1-inch T-case drop, so we're going to install that, and that should fix his driveline vibrations. We're going to go on and put new U-joints and stuff in the drive shaft as well while it's out. Might as well. As far as the steering problems go, I took this thing for a test drive, and it was sketchy, to say the least. At 45 mile an hour, you hit a dip in the road and it changes lanes. Like, it'll jerk the wheel out of your hand. It's violent. And I knew right off the bat what was the cause, and it had to be a geometry issue with the steering linkage. Typically on these Jeeps, if you get the drag link off parallel with the track bar, it will cause severe bump steer. And that's what we've got going on. So as you can see, you've got the springs that were installed with the kit. We got a steering stabilizer, some shocks, but the sway bar disconnects, or sway bar end links I should say, are factory. They did install a track bar upgrade, so it's not a drop track bar bracket, but it eliminates the little ball joint, like a tie rod end deal on the end of the factory tie rod or track bar, and this track bar is adjustable to center it up, so they got that right. But they installed this big drop Pitman arm on this thing, and I'm not sure why, because they didn't drop the track bar. And now if you look, these are no longer parallel. The drag link is lower quite a bit angle wise than the track bar is. So what's happening is every time the suspension moves, those two bars are fighting each other because they're not moving in the same arc, and that can't happen. So when that happens, it will the weight of the vehicle is going to overpower your ability to hold on to the steering wheel, ergo you get bump steer. and this thing is doing it violently. So I went on and ordered a factory Pitman arm for it because that's all it needs. If you do not install a drop bracket on the track bar, you do not install a drop Pitman arm on these. If you're running one, you have to run both because the geometry of the steering linkage has to stay in line or parallel. Otherwise, they'll be dangerous to drive. So we're going to fix that. We're going to remove this Pitman arm, put a factory Pitman arm back on it, and we'll throw that on the part shelf. But that should fix his issues as far as bump steer goes. And then all we'll have left is to service the transmission transfer case, and that's easy peasy. So we are going to start with the T-case drop and get that knocked out. So first up is our T-case drop. This is a Daystar kit, and comes with 2 sets of bolts. Earlier TJs use a different thread than the later, so be sure to use the right bolts. Compare with the bolts you take out. And this kit is a simple deal. This comes with 6 little 1-inch hard plastic or hard rubber isolators for the skid plate. So what we're gonna do, which this thing underneath is really clean frame wise. So yeah, we're gonna try to get these bolts out without breaking anything. Hopefully that goes smoothly. We'll lower this down, slide the little spacers in, and get it bolted back up. And that should cure his driveline vibrations. And we'll go on and rebuild the rear drive shaft, because the rear straps at the rear end are kind of messed up too. So I want to replace those as well. But yeah, so this is pretty simple. I'm going to go on and buzz that down. And if I run into any issues, I'll show you. So I got all the bolts loose on both sides. They came right out, surprisingly enough, but I did leave all the bolts in, and I'm gonna do one side at a time just to make this easy. We'll drop these 3, lower this down just a little bit, slide our spacers in, and put our new bolts in, snug it back up. We'll leave the bolts loose until we get the other side done, and then we'll just run them all up. It should make it go pretty easy. Be sure to match up the bolts to the ones you take out. Now, one size I believe is metric, one size is standard. Match them up, make sure you got the right ones. These aren't conical like these are, so they get flat washers like so. So that went really smooth. All 6 bolts came out really easy, and the spacers and new hardware went in really easy. So I'm gonna go on, I've just got those snugged down, so I'm gonna go on and torque those down to spec, and then we're gonna go on and pull the rear drive shaft, put new U-joints in it, which the angle on that is much better than it was closer to factory. So we'll go on and do that, and then we'll move up to the front and see how that goes. So now that we got this cross member torqued down, we torqued these bolts to 55 foot-pounds, which is the factory spec. I got back here and I'm looking at this U-joint, and we've got different size bolts. So it looks like we got a bolt and nut here, a bolt and nut here, and then we've got 2 different size bolts here, which are really loose. So that's not a good sign. Hopefully this this yoke isn't stripped out, but we'll find out here in a minute. So it would appear that this yoke has been damaged at some point, because they've drilled out one of the holes on each side for a bolt and nut, which seems kind of strange, but I mean, it'll work. I mean, there are several that do the same thing, that use bolt and nut instead of threaded holes. So it's not a huge deal, but it's kind of cobbled. But I'm going to replace the straps anyways, but I'll have to reuse the hardware that they had on it. I'll just I'll put some thread locker on it so it doesn't loosen up, and I'll let the owner know and see what he says. But as it stands, I don't have a yoke for this, and I'm not replacing it. So if he wants to have it replaced, he'll have to take it somewhere to a Driveline shop, because I don't like messing with these. Looks like it's got a little bit of oil leak too. So anywho, we're gonna keep going. I'm gonna knock out the U-joints in this. This end looks to have been replaced, and that's probably when the yoke got tore up. And this end is factory spicer. So I'm gonna go on and I got 2 spicer U-joints for it. I'm gonna go on and put those in and get this put back in, and then we'll see about servicing the transmission transfer case, and then we'll move up to the front. Got our new spicer U-joints put in. For the TJ, there is your part number. It's a 1310X, and that is the spicer number. But I use non-greasables. They are a little bit stronger in the body, and for the purpose of this vehicle, the owner more than likely won't be servicing it. So if he takes it to an oil change place, they're not going to lube the drive shaft U-joints and stuff like that. So I use the non-greasables, and they work out just fine. So the factory ones were non-greasable. They've been in it for 160K. They were just fine too. They were due to be replaced, but they weren't trashed. But anywho, I'm gonna go on and get this put back in place, and then we'll work on servicing the transmission and transfer case. Got the drive shaft back in, so next up I'm gonna service this transfer case out. Always start out trying to get the fill plug out first, because if you can't get the fill plug out, there's no point in trying to drain the transfer case, because old fluid is better than no fluid. So we'll try to get that loose. Hopefully it'll come out. Sometimes they like to seize in these cases, and yeah, that's no fun. But anywho, good there. And good there. Fluid looks nice and clean, no surprises. So I'll let this drain down and go on and get the plugs put back in it and get it filled back up. Then we'll move on up to the 6-speed, get it drained out, and get the fluid changed in that as well. I believe he purchased Redline MTL fluid for it, which is a really good fluid for transmissions needing automatic transmission style fluids. But yeah, we'll get them changed out and go from there. There we are. Next up is knocking this Pitman arm out. So it's really not that bad of a job if you've got the right tools to do it. Pull the drag link, the cotter pin and nut, knock that loose, knock it down. Then this nut here will be torqued fairly tight, so impact will make quick work of that. Then Pitman arm puller should knock it right off. And since it's been replaced, it shouldn't be too bad to change. But I bought a Moog factory replacement one. That's what we're going to put back on it. And I think that'll fix the weird driving issues he's been having. But yeah, that'll pretty well wrap this one up. Here is the difference in a factory one and this the drop Pitman arm that was on it. It does not need anywhere near this much drop. The factory one, along with the factory track bar mount position, should give us good steering geometry again and hopefully fix the bump steer issues. If not, I'll have to find a Pitman arm that is in between these two. I ran the numbers on this, and this is meant for up to a 6-inch lift, and yeah, that's just not necessary in this case. So I'm gonna go on and get this one put on. I'll put a little anti-seize on the splines, torque the nut to spec, and get it put back together. So with a factory Pitman arm back on it, our steering geometry is much better. It's not perfect, but the angle of the drag link is much closer to the angle of the track bar, which means the bump steer should be substantially better. Short of deleting this conversion and going back with the standard type track bar, we're going to be hard to get it perfect because the track bar actually needs to go up a little bit. But anywho, we're going to get cleaned up a little bit, take it for a quick drive, see how it does, see if we've got any vibrations in the back end or anything like that, and hopefully see that the bump steer is gone. So 50-ish or so, this road's fairly bumpy, and it's not perfect, but it's far more predictable than it was. Jeep definitely needs an alignment. I'd say the caster angle is off a fair bit, which is making it want to track with the road a lot more than it should. It's not wanting to recenter on its own, but that's fixable, I think. But it's got a 4-inch or so lift under it, and it's got the factory control arms under it, which means that the caster angle is going to be way off. It needs a slightly longer control arm underneath it, at least on the bottom, to help correct for that. But or adjustable control arms. But we're gonna keep driving it and see how it does. So far, vibrations are a lot better, and the overall steering is substantially better. It's not fighting me like it was, and like I said, the dips in the road aren't making it change lanes, so that's a big improvement. But we'll drive it around a little bit and see how it does. Yeah, so just went over some railroad tracks in this thing at like 35, 40 mile an hour, and stayed straight, didn't fight me at all. Previously, when I test drove this thing, when the owner dropped it off to me, you could hit a dip in the road, and I wasn't prepared for it. He didn't tell me. He just said it was a little weird steering wise. You hit a dip in the road and it changed lanes at 45 mile an hour in a TJ on 35s. Changing lanes all of a sudden without you wanting to do so is a little sketchy. But right now I'm on the highway cruising 60 with one hand on the wheel. Obviously the steering wheel is not centered because I haven't adjusted the drag link yet, but it's not fighting me. The road is not flat, as you can see. Need to pay attention. The road's bumpy. As you can see, the wheel's not jerking around or anything. Steering geometry on these TJs is important, and from the factory, it's relatively good. Up to a 4-inch lift or so, you don't need drop track bar brackets and drop Pitman arms and all that nonsense. And you definitely don't want just one or the other. You gotta match them up, otherwise they won't work right. Got another railroad track coming up, doing 45-ish or so. We'll see how it does. A little wiggle in the wheel, but didn't change lanes. Kept tracking straight, much more predictable. We're working on servicing this transmission, and this TJ does have the 6-speed in it, and as you can see, I've already got the fluid drained out of it. The drain plug here is a 17mm hex drive, so you'll need a 17mm driver like so. This is 1/2-inch drive. Picked it up at the local auto parts store because I didn't have one. Same goes for the fill plug, which is on the passenger side. And by the way, the transmission crossmember or skid plate does not get in the way of draining the transmission or filling it. But it's a 14mm fill plug. Same deal as the drain plug. Now, when you go to loosen these, be absolutely sure that your sockets are fully seated in the plugs, and keep even pressure on. Don't use an impact or anything. Keep even pressure on your ratchet so you don't round these out. But and make sure the fill plug you can get it loose first before draining this thing. But anywho, now we're going to get it filled back up. We've got Redline MTL for that, And yeah, I've already test driven this thing with the changes we've made. Still got a little bit of a driveline vibration. So I talked to the owner. This Jeep, if you notice, has stock control arms, top, bottom, front, and rear. And it's got at least 3.5, if not 4 inches of lift on it. So I started looking at the components. Most of these components are Rough Country springs, Rough Country shocks, but it wasn't a kit from Rough Country because like the drop Pitman arm wouldn't have come in that kit. And the 3 and 4 inch kits come with lower control arms that are fixed length that correct the driveline angles. Is it perfect or ideal? No. You would want to do it right, you would want adjustable bars, top and bottom, front and rear. That lets you set your pinion angles correctly and lets you dial in the caster angle on the front end. But in this case, for what this is going to be used for, we went on and ordered a set of lower control arms from Rough Country to match the springs. Got them for front and rear. Those will be in tomorrow. So we'll go on and swap those in as well when they get here. And hopefully that'll correct the rest of our vibrations. As far as how it drives really well, but it chases the road a little bit. So hopefully the change in caster angle will help with that. Help prevent death wobble and such down the road. But anyways, I'm gonna go on and get this transmission filled back up and we'll catch you tomorrow when the parts show up. So, working on control arms. Got one side swapped out already, kind of hard to see. Went with the Rough Country fixed arms for front and back. Hopefully in the back it'll fix our pinion angle issue we're having. But yeah, I didn't really do anything special to drop it out. I just got the weight up and zipped the bolts out. I put the axle side of the arm bolt in first, slid the front side in place, and then just kind of worked it up in there with a pry bar. Got the bolt holes aligned, slid the bolts in, didn't have to take anything apart. So on the other side, it should be easier now that I've got this side already changed out. And then we'll go back through and tighten up all the hardware. Once I get the back in, if it's not storming, I'm gonna take it for a quick test drive to see if the vibration's gone. And if we're good, I'll go on and move on to the front. So got our rear arms in place, both sides. Got the hardware in, everything's torqued to spec. A little bit of blue Loctite on everything. And our pinion angles look, or driveline angle looks much better. The yoke's pretty well matched from the eye. So I think that'll take care of his driveline vibration. So next up, well, it's pouring down rain right this minute. So might give it a little bit, see if this rain lets up and take it for a drive. Or I may just say forget it and go on and throw the front arms on it and be done with it. Haven't decided yet, but anyways, as far as the back goes, I jacked the back end up, got the weight off of the rear end, got the tires up off the ground a little bit, threw some chocks underneath it. I did throw another jack underneath the snout of the differential so it couldn't twist, and pretty well did one side at a time. Zipped the bolts out, pulled the arms out, put the new ones in, wiggled it around, got everything lined back up, put the bolts in. Didn't have to take anything extra apart on the back, and I don't plan on doing anything extra to the front. So probably 45 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes to change them out, something like that. Probably would have been faster if one of the bolts kind of fought me, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna move on to the front and get it knocked out. And just about got the fronts wrapped up. Again, the front side was actually easier. It took about maybe 20 minutes total to swap them out. I don't have the cam bolts on the axle housing, the actual cams set in place yet. I'll have to rotate the axle housing forward a little bit, pull it forward a little bit to get them to sit down in place. That won't be a big deal. Right now I gotta go in for a little bit. I'll be back out here and we'll button this up. And we probably won't get to drive it tonight. We'll see. But yeah, we're almost done. Well, just got back from a little test drive, even though it's raining and kind of nasty out. And I tell you what, this has made a huge, huge difference in how this thing drives. It's much more comfortable on the road. Now you can drive it 60 mile an hour on the highway with one hand on the steering wheel and not feel like your life's in danger. It's tracking a lot better. It's not perfect. It needs to go to the alignment shop. And someone decided to replace the caster bolts on the lower control arms with straight bolts, so he's going to have to get replacements for those before it goes to the alignment shop. But yeah, no more driveline vibrations, so the control arms fixed that problem. It also fixed a lot of the tracking issues in the front end with the caster angle. But yeah, overall, very, very big improvement. And I think the owner's going to really like the results of what we've done. So, anywho, for now, I think this one is going to be wrapped up. It will probably be getting a clutch in the near future, and it will probably get some shifter bushings and some piddly stuff done, but that's up to the owner when he wants to do it. With that said, we're going to call it. If you got any comments, complaints, questions, drop them in the comment section below. If you want to support the channel, check out the website, www.notsograndgarage.com. We got our merch, our black diesel gear, you know the drill there. We've also got a PayPal account set up if you want to make a donation. Link to all that is in the video description. If you would, hit that thumbs up button. Helps us out quite a bit and doesn't cost you anything. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We appreciate you watching.